Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Inspiring and Able. Today I'm very excited to invite a very profound speaker in my opinion. He is a Catholic author and a Catholic psychologist, um, speaking about God's loving mercy. Please help me welcome Mr. Isaac Wickham.
Hello.
Welcome,
I'm I'm
welcome
super
Isaac.
glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. So, for those who don't know what, I guess the first question would be, what is a Catholic psychologist and how did you come to this work?
Yeah. So yeah, as you're saying, I'm Catholic and um I think mostly started in college where I had a few friends who were really suffering. And I was going through some of my own suffering. And that was my first introduction into the realm of mental health, knowing what it was and seeing
Yay.
it firsthand and seeing it really hurting people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also seeing the power of being with somebody, the power
Mm,
of not being alone. Our suffering is so much worse when we're alone. And so when I saw that just being with somebody when they're suffering, even if I don't have all the answers, even if I don't have, yeah, even if I can't fix them, just being with them can do so much. And that moved my heart to say that I want to be somebody who's with other people while they suffer. Um, and so that was my first introduction into the world of psychology, and I've been in it since. And it's such a beautiful field because you can be with somebody where they're suffering and find hope and courage and strength right there in the middle of the darkness and then
mm,
move forward. And it's so amazing.
yes, it is. I can vouch. Can you talk about in one of your talks where I saw you on the prayer morning of Venus retreat? You talk about suffering as kind of redemptive, like acknowledging our wounds can lead to redemption and peace. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. Yeah. So in our Christian faith, our God wants to heal us. He wants to make us whole. He wants to redeem all that we've suffered. I think sometimes we approach God saying that He's good, but deep down we're hurting. We're really, really hurting. And we try to have this more formal relationship with God,
Mm,
as if we're more like His secretary, as if we have to do PR for Him. But He really just wants our heart. He wants to be able to see where we're hurting. He wants to hear how angry we are. He wants to hear about our emotions. So if we start to see Him as a father who really, really cares about us, it makes sense that he wants to be part of all of our life, just like a good father would want to be a part of all of your life. And so he wants to hear what's going on in your heart. Um, and then in his plan, his intention is that our suffering is all for something, that it's all
yeah.
for something that makes it worth it. And I think we don't consider that very often. We maybe think when we get to heaven, we won't suffer anymore. But the promise is actually that when we get to heaven, all of our suffering will be worth it. That we'll get to see what
Mm,
makes it all worthwhile for why we had to be in so much pain, for why the struggle was so hard.
yes, I can agree with you there. But what would you say if I could role play with you for just a second? What would you say to someone who maybe didn't have a very positive parent relationship and then they come to you saying, I've been through this, how could this be redemptive? Like, how
Yeah.
would you encourage someone who's had like really negative experience with family members to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. So whenever you're working with somebody who's really suffering, you can't just tell them, oh, it's all going to be redeemed. You can't give an easy answer to suffering. And because we don't like words don't actually aren't enough. Words aren't enough for to respond to how much we do suffer. And
Mm-hmm.
so just if somebody comes to you suffering and you say, yep, it's going to all be worth it, that's just going to push them away. That's not going to solve anything. That's not going to give anybody hope. Um, but to be with somebody in suffering makes all the difference. What we were just talking about at the beginning of the difference between being alone or having somebody who's there with you is profound. And so
Mm-hmm.
if somebody comes to you having a a very hard childhood, having difficult relationships with their own parents, maybe there's abuse, maybe there's different traumas that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
The way you start to show people hope and love is by staying with them, by loving them, by being with them where it's dark, but not letting the darkness overwhelm you. So in your own presence with them, that's where you start to that's where you start to proclaim hope. You don't proclaim hope as much with your words, but with your presence, by the fact that you're there with them and that you're going to keep fighting for them and that you're going to keep moving with them and that you see so much goodness and beauty and hope in their life. That I think that's how you actually stay with somebody who's suffering. It's not so much that you give the right answers, but that you're there.
Right. And you say something that's very impactful for me as an empath, like not letting it overwhelm you. Because sometimes I'm sitting with somebody and it's like, whew, like it's just like this big thing. So, what would you say to the helpers that want to gain presence? Like, say that sounds like a great idea, but how do I not get embroiled in it? Because I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
main thing that makes people go to straight advice, or at least it does for me. Like,
yeah, yeah. I think that's a beautiful question because suffering is often too much for us. There's a there's a real reality. There's a reality that it's the amount of suffering that people go through is overwhelming. Um, And I find that I struggle the most when I think it's my job to fix it or to make it go away or to solve it. And then that becomes a crushing burden because I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make it go away. I don't know how to solve it. But if I look to God and say, you are the one who will take care of this.
yeah.
This suffering is ultimately God's responsibility, that ultimately He's the one who will redeem it. He's the one who will save it. He's the one who will make the path. All I need to do is be present and to love as much as I can.
Right.
So if I take responsibility for the other person's suffering, it's going to crush me almost right away and I'm going to want to run away. But if I put that on God and say, you take this, I trust you with this, I'm just
Mm,
going to be here. I don't know how this ends. I don't know how to solve this, but I'm going to be here and I'm not going away. Does that make sense?
yes. Yes, kind of basically like John and Mary at the foot of the cross, because you can almost see Mary is kind of looking up and giving it to God as she's watching Jesus where he
Yeah.
is in that moment. So that
Yeah.
does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
you see St. Peter and just going to the gospel, like St. Peter is often trying to solve Jesus' suffering. He's like, no, I'm gonna not let you go to Jerusalem to suffer. I'm gonna go with you. St. Peter's trying to solve the plan, whereas Mary or St. John, they're just there with Jesus saying, okay, I trust you. This is breaking my heart, but I
Mm-hmm.
trust your plan and I trust that you will make something good come out of this. And
Mm-hmm.
they just, yeah.
I definitely see that. And how would you teach someone? Because I like to give practical approaches. How would you start with someone who's like, I don't know how to see the good right now? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
how would you, like, what's a step that you would maybe give within in practice that would help someone kind of start to see the good?
Oh, that's another beautiful question. So how do you start to see the good? So I'd give a couple different recommendations. One is get help. Um, that often when we're in our own heads, we get stuck in our cycles, and our
Yeah.
cycles are really strong. Um, and just to bring in somebody else who sees
Mm,
life in a different way, in a good way, that can start to see your life in that way. And then they can teach you in a way to see your own life. That's what my role is as a therapist often is people are coming stuck in their cycles
yep.
and I'm just a new perspective saying, but wait, you missed this part. Or look at this part. This is actually beautiful. Or this actually shows a lot of growth.
Yeah.
So getting somebody else, and not just anybody, because there's a lot of negative people. There's a lot of people who will just make you feel worse. But if there's somebody that you can trust, it could be a therapist, but it could just be a close friend, somebody that you trust that's just, you just go to them and you're just like, I need help seeing hope right now. Like it's hard
Yeah.
for me to see hope. Can you help me? So that'd be one thing I'd recommend is find somebody you trust, find somebody that seems to have a hopeful outlook on life and just start asking them questions, open up. Um, the other thing I'd recommend, and there's lots of different techniques, so I don't want to get into too many, but I'll just suggest a simple one here. Um, one thing you can do is just start writing down beautiful moments. Um, Usually when we're
Mm,
in a dark or negative place, we start to filter our like our brains actually filter information, and usually it starts to filter out, so we only see the negative information. And then the more we see the negative information, the worse we feel, and the worse we feel, the more we just see negative information. Um, Whereas if you just start documenting beautiful moments, that can start to change the way your brain filters information, and you start to see more beautiful things. Um, like I suggest even just writing down 10 beautiful moments a week or 10 beautiful moments a day, it of things that have actually happened. Like, oh, that sunset was really beautiful. Or when I was walking through the store and that person smiled at me, that was really beautiful. Or I had a nice conversation with my mom, or whatever it is. Just start keeping track of it. Because your brain, when it's not doing well, is going to try to trick you into thinking everything's bad, everything's dark.
yeah.
But if you write it down, you can say, no, brain, I remember because I wrote it down that there are
Yeah.
good things. And then the more that you see good things, the more your brain will be trained to see even more good things. And you can start a cycle in the other direction where the more beauty you see, the more beauty you can then see in the future. So I'd say those are the two things. Find a friend who can help you see hope again, and then document beautiful things.
That's beautiful. And I agree for sure. And I think you can find that a lot with Mary's story. Like she just, even with the angel Gabriel, and this is my segue into the next part, she was very much like, look at all the good that just happened in my life. And
Yeah,
I'm speaking to this because of the one talk where you talk about Mary's fiat, where she's like, behold, and how that shifts identity. Can you speak a
yeah,
little more about that? Because I have many viewers who may not sign up for the talk, but it was very influential, and I think
yeah,
it's important.
yeah, yeah. So I was preparing to do some talks about Advent a few years ago, and so I was really staying with the gospel passages about about Christmas and Advent. And especially with the one where the angel Gabriel comes to Mary and basically invites her to have a baby, to have Jesus come into the world through her. Um, and like, I mean, it's huge news, and she's kind of confused, and she's like, "How can this be?" Um, but in the end, the way that she says yes is really profound. She says, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done to me according to thy word." Um, and I've heard that a lot since I was a kid, but that like really staying with it, it struck me how how strange of an answer that is, but also how beautiful of an answer. Because the first word that she says in her yes is behold, which means look at me. Or another translation is here I am. And that's a strange way of starting to say yes. But what I love about it is that the most important thing for Mary is to be before God and to let God look at her. That she shows herself to God. She shows herself, she says, look at me, here I am. Instead of hiding herself, because we often hide ourselves, especially when we feel ashamed.
Yep.
We hide ourselves. Even if we're like still out, we hide our deep internal self. Whereas for Mary, when she's saying yes, she's putting herself totally before God and say, look at me, look at all of me, look at who I am. And then the next part of the answer is, I am the handmaid of the Lord. And so when God is looking at her, she's able to claim her identity. I am the handmaid of the Lord. And that even that identity is relational back to God. And so God looks at her, and in his gaze, she understands who she is. And because she understands who she is, then she's able to say, let God's will be done in my life. Because she
Mhm.
sees herself as precious before God, as known before God, as seen by God. And she knows God to be good and holy and faithful. And then she says, whatever you want. I want whatever you want because I know that you love me and I know that you're good to me. So I could say a lot more, but if you have any follow-up questions.
Well, yeah, just how can we say behold? Because you're very true about this, Tiffany. How can you say behold when the thing you need God to look at is God, I'm a mess. Like I can't just totally
Yes.
screw up, but we need him then the most. And you spoke about like a practice that was very influential for me when I first started doing it. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
But could you tell if that kind of like the tantrum on paper, I think is what you call it, like as a way to kind of be become comfortable in saying behold not only in the really good moments but
Yeah.
in the really tricky kind of I wish you didn't see this right now moments.
Yeah. 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 And honestly, I don't totally remember what I said on the retreat, so I'm just gonna go with what I'm thinking now. But yeah, because what we need to show God the most is usually what we're most ashamed of.
Yeah.
So we don't want him to see it. Um, but what happens when we keep that shame, we deep down think, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. If
Mhm.
God really knew me, he wouldn't love me. If other people really knew me, they wouldn't love me. And so the more we hold on to that shame, we're actually separate from a deeper relationship with God and from other people.
Right.
And so God is really gentle and patient. He doesn't just barge in and say, like, ha, I see it. I see all that stuff. But he lets us come to him. And so I would say the way you start is usually in a pretty gentle way. Of just like, I'm gonna let him see this part of me. Like I'm kind of afraid to show him my deepest shame. Like I don't want to show anybody that right now, but maybe I can show him that embarrassing moment and say like, um, look at me here. Look at me here. A priest friend was giving a homily once, and he was sharing an embarrassing example of from his life where he like had accidentally ridden a lawnmower over a wall a little bit,
Yeah,
a retaining wall, and when he was sharing it, he paused at that moment and said, "Jesus, look at me now."
yeah,
And that's been inspirational for a lot of my life where, okay, I'm right in the middle of embarrassment. Jesus, look at me now. Look at look at all this shame. Look at how I messed up. Look at how I failed. And then if you just start getting in the habit of doing that, you don't need to go to the big shame right away. If you're not ready to go there, that's okay. But just start with the little things like, oh, wow, I was really impatient right there. Jesus, look at me now. Look at how impatient I am. And ultimately, that shows us too how much we need God.
yeah.
Like, I want to love better. I want to be more faithful. I want to be more true. I want to be more genuine. Jesus, look at me. Save me here. Take care of me here. Love me here. Um, and and over time, the more you show yourself to Jesus, the more you'll see his tenderness, the more you'll see that he's safe, that he's faithful, that he's good. And that'll embolden you to show him even more of yourself. And so over time, it actually becomes a delight to show God yourself.
Yeah.
Even where it's a shame, even where there's deep shame, it can become a deep delight to be seen by God there and to be loved there, and through his love to be free of your shame.
Mm-hmm. And would it be safe to say, do you think that that is the moment that Mary was being able to go look at me now? Because back in those days, for a woman to find out I'm pregnant before my marriage just consummated,
Yeah,
that was scary. That was a death sentence back in those days.
yeah,
So So in retrospect, she's not going, look at me now, look at what the angel said. She's going, okay, and may be seen as someone to be like
yep,
a really embarrassing moment, but still here I am.
yep,
And
yep,
in a few verses later, she's celebrating it with a neighbor.
yep.
And so I think that's a powerful example too. Would you agree with that, or am I off? You can
What?
tell me if I'm off.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. That when Mary said yes to the angel, it was a risky yes to say.
Yeah.
That she was risking her engagement with Joseph. She was risking public ridicule. She was risking um like the shame coming onto her family. She was risking so much. Um, but she said yes because she said, I know God is trustworthy and that I can trust him even in the midst of all these risks. Um, we can sometimes think that, oh, if an angel came to me, that would make it super clear and it would be obvious what to do. But if you see angels, the example of angels in the Bible, every time they show up, the person's terrified. They say, like if you think of Zechariah or the shepherds, in the same set of stories, the angel shows up and the people are terrified. But Mary is at peace because she trusts that God will care for her in whatever situation she lands in.
Yes, and I think that's a very powerful thing. And to speak to one more practice, you spoke about being honest with God and basically having a tantrum with him is the exact word you used.
Yes.
By the way, I had to work through that because tantrums when I was a kid were not receivable. Like I had very loving parents. I just had parents who were like, don't like in your room if you had a tantrum. That's just how I was
Yeah.
raised.
Yeah.
So, but can you explain how actually allowing yourself to be honest with God and warts and all can actually help us,
Yeah.
have a deeper relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. So being honest with God is so important. So often in our human relationships, we're doing a lot of work to manage them.
Yep.
So we're kind of fixing our own emotional response. We're trying to manage their emotional response. We just want to keep some semblance of peace between us. And thinking like, okay, if I act too poorly, this person won't accept me anymore. I won't belong in society anymore. And there's some merit to that. There's some merit of like, okay, a society needs to have some regulation to it. But with God, we don't need to manage the relationship. Like he's just in charge. He
Yep.
he already loves us. And the more we can be honest with him, it's actually a way of giving our heart to him. So if I'm really angry at God because of how much I had to suffer when it didn't seem like I needed to suffer, like he could have just healed me or he could have just saved that person from dying, but instead that person died or I have to carry this this ailment and it makes me suffer. So I'm angry about it. When I'm angry towards God, that actually is showing him a part of my heart. That's
Yep.
allowing him into that, even that part of my heart. If I just pretend I'm not angry, what I'm actually saying is like my relationship with God can't handle this. This emotion isn't okay in with the relationship with God. God can't handle that. I'm going to be cast out. I'm going to be seen as bad by God. And so the more you're honest about when you're angry, about whatever it is, whatever desires you have, about your sadness, about all of these things, you're allowing it to be part of your relationship with God. And when it
Mhm.
becomes part of your relationship with God, that's where it can really be redeemed because God redeems all things. But he waits for us to bring them to him and say like, hey, like I actually want to fight with you. I kind of have a fighting relationship with God. I have since I was a kid where I would just like, all right, God, we're gonna hash this out now. Like I'm upset. I don't understand this. What's going on? And
Right.
he's always patient. He's always good. He receives me. And when he receives me, he can start to redeem me. And he can also show me that though even those parts of me are good, that he loves them, that he wants to take care of them.
Mhm. And by the way, it was a very helpful practice. There's this concept known as the shadow side. I
Yeah.
wonder if you've heard of it, but it's like all the things that society or our families taught us that are bad, we suppress down. And
Yeah.
and yeah, if we allow God, who's the light of the world, to shed that shadow side as well, then
Yeah.
things change. And we're
Yeah.
still flawed, but we can handle things a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with when you're talking about the shadow side, that shadow side, even if we're hiding it, has a lot of power over us.
Yes.
Like it has a lot of influence. But actually, the less we hide it, the more we show it in our relationship with God, the less power it has. Um,
Yes.
so God will often talk about, like in the gospel, he says, everything that's in the darkness will be brought to the light, because he wants to free us from the darkness. He's not bringing it to the light to shame us, but to free us.
Right. I agree with you there. We've unfortunately hit the 10-minute mark, so do you have any final thoughts you'd like to pass along to
Yeah.
anyone who needs it? Or
Yeah. Um, I I guess what I would like to invite people to is to really risk on their relationship with God again. Um, that that maybe you've suffered a lot. Maybe you've had a lot of bad experiences. Maybe you've even had a lot of bad experiences in church, but that God is gentle and he really wants to redeem everything in your life. He wants to bring light. He wants to bring joy and peace. You can bring him your anger. You can bring him your sorrow and your despair, and he will take it all. And in that, through that, he will give you peace. He will give you joy that doesn't end. That there's that there's real healing that can happen. And God wants that for you, and He wants to start with you today.
That's beautiful. And my final question that I ask everybody is, what inspires you to keep going with your work? Because as a crisis worker myself and as an advocate, a lot of helping others is extremely heavy work. So what inspires you to keep going even when things get heavy,
Yeah.
essentially?
Yeah. Um, so what inspires me? I think what keeps inspiring me is that I time after time see that the darkness doesn't win. Um,
Mm,
and so with so many of the people I've worked with in my own life so often, I've been in dark places. But over and over again, I see that God wins, that there's light, that there's even within the depths of those darkness, there's often so much courage and love and beauty to be had there.
mm-hmm.
And so what inspires me to keep going, especially when it's dark, is remembering that God wins even where it looks the darkest. And so then I can just be curious. I can say, this looks totally impossible. God, what are you going to do here? How are you going to bring about your victory even here? Because this looks like too much. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to bear any of that burden. I don't have to solve any of the problems. I get to just show up and watch God work and be part of God's work. Um, and that's continually beautiful.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you so much, Isaac. And no, I shouldn't say this, but good luck tomorrow, because I know you're stateside. So, my prayers are with you, whatever happens. And
Thank you.
thank you for joining us.
Can can I also invite people? I do have a program.
Yes,
Can I invite people?
yes.
Um, so I have a program. It's called Known, Embraced by the Heart of the Father, and it's specifically for healing wounds with God the Father. And it's a very honest, raw program um, that has a bunch of space for these big questions and these big wounds to show up and to allow God the Father to come in and heal. And so the website is knownbythefather.com. And on the website, we do have a free retreat on shame, specifically called The Path Out of Shame. So you can sign up for that for free and download it. Um, and then consider joining us for the deeper 12-week program, which is called Known, Embraced by the Heart of the Father. And that starts January 22nd. So we'd love to have you join.
Wonderful. And I will, if you send me your link, I'll be happy to post with this video. And thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you so much.
God bless.
God bless you.
People are gonna see this, by the way.
That's okay.
I'm spastic, so sometimes my mouse doesn't move the way I want it to. Oh boy.
That's okay. I'm here with you. I'm right here.
Father, look at me now.
Yeah, we're doing great. This is part of your courage to be able to do something like this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
God bless.